On March 24th, 1962, in Pensacola, Florida, a group of young boys set out on a day's trip exploring a well-known shipwreck site, hoping it would be a great day of exploring and diving. Just off the coast of Pensacola Bay Harbor, as the day would start off like any others, the five young boys were determined to explore as much as they could on that day. So they gathered everything they needed and really didn't have to go as far. As they all lived in close proximity of each other, with paddles and a small yellow raft tied to the roof of their car, they were all set to head out to the bay. As they arrived, they unloaded the raft and the paddles down to the shoreline, but decided to do a bit of exploring before they'd set off. Not far from them was an old lookout tower, which seemed abandoned, so with a bit of time on their hands, they decided to go and explore it. A few hours had passed, but with still enough time left throughout the day to go out and explore the shipwreck, the boys eventually set off. As there was only 4 paddles between the 5 of them, they would often rotate. In between, one would take a break. There, off in the distance, was the shipwreck, the top half sticking out of the water and the bottom half submerged beneath the waves, as it wasn't that deep there. As they were paddling closer to the wreck, all of a sudden the wind and waves started to pick up. The waves began to get a bit rough and the wind started to get stronger, as it became very difficult to steer and paddle the raft against the current, as the nice shiny cloudy day became dark greyish, overcast within a matter of hours. As the boys were almost there but a few yards away, facing the oncoming winds and rough sea, battling the current, the boys had no other choice but to turn around and head back to the shoreline, as it was equal distance but a bit further the boys quickly sprang into action. Out they jumped into the waves, trying to help push the raft along by swimming alongside it, holding it on all sides. While being battered by the rising waves, the boys were struggling to fight the current. They soon had hopes, as one of the boys spotted and shouted out, "Over there!" as it was a buoy nearby that was bobbing up and down in the waves, but was close enough to get to try and tack the raft as well, and to wait out the rough sea. As they got to the buoy, they realized it was more difficult to hang on to, as the waves were constantly battering it around, but they managed to hold on. They had held on long enough for the waters to slowly start calming down. As quickly it came, as quickly as it went. Finally, the waves were fine enough for the boys to get back on the raft and get back to shore, as it was starting to get dark with the oncoming sunset. But as strangely as that was, a bizarre mist or fog started to engulf all around them. Then a strong, smelly, fishy odor started to fill the air. Then the boys heard off in the distance, not far from where they were, a loud screeching noise along with hissing, then a large splash breaking the calm waters. They couldn't see anything as of yet, until the fog started clearing, and there off in the distance, a large figure with a long neck like and head of a serpent, piercing out of the waters through the fog. It started to make the hissing noise again, then it dove down beneath the surface, making huge waves, terrified at what they'd just witnessed. The boys quickly and frighteningly started to paddle and gain as much distance from whatever that was, as one of the boys was crying out loud to the other boys in the raft, "Where is it? Where did it go?" As all of the boys were screaming and panicking, trying to frantically paddle and steer the raft. All of a sudden, it breaches the waters right next to them, flinging and flipping them off the raft all into the waters, as they all submerged out of the waters, splashing and screaming out to each. They all could hear and almost see each other. But in that moment, the creature breaches out of the waters again, hissing and piercing down towards the boys with its long neck and serpent-shaped head. As it motioned towards them, they all started screaming and started swimming into the direction of the shoreline as the last bit of daylight disappeared. The boys were swimming for their lives back to shore, being pursued by this monstrous sea serpent, as one of the boys who was swimming in front of rest of the boys that were behind trying to catch up. He was the only one that survived that evening, as he remembers the rest of his friends being taken by this creature, recalling as he heard blood-curdling screams and giant splashes breaking the waters in the distance behind, as he could no longer hear them, realizing and fearing the worst. He kept pushing forward, kicking and swimming as fast as he could, realizing he could be next. But at that moment, he felt the shallow sand bank near the shoreline, knowing that he had made it. Exhausted, he'd collapsed on the beach until the next morning he'd woken up in the hospital knowing that he'd survived.